Let me start by saying this. My cousin Lily and I, we're not the kind of people who scare easily. We grew up watching scary movies, reading ghost stories, and laughing at haunted house videos. If someone told us their house was haunted, we'd probably ask for a sleepover and bring snacks. That's just how we are. But after what happened to me in the fall of 2013, I don't laugh at stuff like that anymore. It started like any normal day. I had just gotten home from school, thrown my backpack in the corner of my room and flopped onto my bed. I was 13 at the time, 8th grade, full of teenage awkwardness and bad hair decisions. My parents were both working late that night, and my cousin Lily, who was living with us for a few months, was supposed to be going to a friend's house. So I figured I had the whole house to myself. I put in my earbuds, pulled up some videos on my phone, and just zoned out. For a while, everything was normal. Then I got up to use the bathroom. Now let me explain a bit about our house. It's this weird older place in a small town called Maple Hollow, Pennsylvania. The layout makes no sense. The upstairs bathroom is right across from my cousin's room. Hers is at the end of a short hallway. If you go right out of the bathroom, there's a narrow staircase that goes down to a landing, turns, and then goes the rest of the way to the first floor. And right at the bottom is our front door. Near the bathroom floor to the left, there's a small metal laundry chute that drops down into the basement laundry room. Our house also had one of those talking alarms, the kind that says out loud which door or window has been opened. It was super annoying, but I guess it made us feel a little safer. Anyway, I was in the bathroom about to flush when I heard it. Thud. It came from Lily's room. I froze. For a second I thought maybe she hadn't left yet, but then I remembered. I saw her backpack was gone when I passed her room, and Mom had texted me earlier saying Lily would be out with friends all evening. I flushed and turned on the sink to wash my hands, but I didn't hear anything else. The house had gone totally quiet. Too quiet. That kind of silence where it almost feels thick, like the air's pressing in on you. I turned off the water and stepped toward the bathroom door. My stomach twisted. I couldn't explain why, but something felt wrong. Really wrong. I reached out and quietly turned the lock, then I heard it. A voice. Not loud, but low. Like someone talking under their breath. It was coming from Lily's room. But it wasn't her voice. And it definitely wasn't my dad or anyone else I recognized. It was this raspy, whispery muttering, deep and rough, like someone dragging gravel across pavement. I couldn't make out what it was saying, but I could tell there were sharp sounds in it, like hissing S's and ticking T's. I backed away from the door, and then came the footsteps. Slow, heavy, like someone walking barefoot on hardwood. I swear I could feel them in my chest. One step, then another, coming straight toward the bathroom. They stopped right at the door. I covered my mouth with both hands, trying not to breathe too loud. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then there was silence. Long, thick silence, and then the footsteps started again, this time going away. I heard them move down the hallway toward the stairs. I pressed my ear to the door as carefully as I could. Thump. The sound came from the stairway landing. Thump. Again, this time from the bottom of the stairs. And then, the alarm. Front door. Open. I heard the door creak, then close. The voice of the alarm rang out again. Front door closed. Whoever or whatever it was had just left, right? I stood there for maybe a full minute, frozen, trying to decide if it was really over. And then just when I was starting to reach for the doorknob, bang! I nearly screamed. It wasn't the front door, it was coming from the laundry. Shoot. 10 seconds after the front door had supposedly opened and closed, someone or something was banging on the chute door from the basement side. It wasn't just tapping either. It was violent, like someone was ramming it over and over with something long and metal. I watched in horror as the small metal flap vibrated with each hit. I could hear it creaking under the pressure. I backed up and pressed myself against the opposite wall. The banging went on for what felt like forever, then suddenly stopped. Dead silence again. I stayed in that bathroom for what felt like hours, too scared to even breathe loud. Finally, I cracked the door and crept out into the hallway. Every shadow looked alive. Every creak in the floor made my heart jump. I made it back to my room, locked the door, well, held it shut, mine didn't have a lock, and called my parents. No answer, so I waited, sitting on my bed, eyes glued to the door handle, holding it tightly just in case. When they finally came home later that night, I ran to them and told them everything. They didn't believe me, said it was just my imagination, but when Lily got home later, I told her too, and she just stared at me. Then she said something I'll never forget. I didn't want to freak you out, but I used to hear stuff in this house too, especially from the attic. You know it opens right above my bed, right? Neither of us slept well after that. Even now, years later, I don't know what I heard that day. A prank? Someone breaking in? Something else? All I know is this: something came up those stairs. Something stood outside the bathroom door. Something tried to get in through the laundry chute. And something about that voice, those whispery, scratchy words I couldn't understand, still makes my skin crawl. I don't believe in ghosts, but I do believe something was in our house that night, and I hope it never comes back. Hey, my name's Jamie. I was 15 when this happened, and it still gives me chills every time I think about it. It was the summer of 2013, and I was living with my older sister, Sarah, in this small, beat-up apartment building in Eastwood Heights, a low-income neighborhood on the edge of Cleveland, Ohio. Sarah had taken me in after our mom passed away, and while I appreciated everything she did for me, let's just say, the apartment left a lot to be desired. We lived on the 5th floor in a building where the elevator worked only half the time. The walls were paper-thin, and the hallways always smelled like a mix of mildew, cheap cologne, and something I still can't place. The lighting in the hall flickered constantly, like something straight out of a horror movie. And don't even get me started on the neighbors. Most kept to themselves, but one in particular made my skin crawl. The man in 4B. Our unit, 4A, was right next to his. From the day I moved in, I noticed him. He was always there like a shadow that never moved. Every time I came home from school or went to take out the trash, he'd be sitting just outside his door in a plastic chair, staring at the hallway like he was waiting for something. Or someone. He never smiled, never nodded, just stared. He was this tall, thin guy who looked like he hadn't seen sunlight in years. His skin was pale, almost grayish. He wore the same dusty brown coat every day, no matter how hot it got outside. His eyes were the worst part, sunken in with these heavy bags underneath like he hadn't slept in weeks. And when he looked at me, it wasn't just a glance. It was like he was reading me, studying me. The first time I walked past him, I said a quiet, "Hi," like I was trying to be polite. He didn't answer. Just stared. Sarah told me, "Don't talk to him. Just walk past. He's not all there." That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. Things started getting weird a few weeks after I moved in. At first it was small stuff I told myself was nothing, like I'd catch him mumbling under his breath as I walked by. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I always caught my name. I never told him my name. Neither did Sarah. Then one night when Sarah was working late, she did the overnight shift at the hospital, I came home from my friend Leo's place around 9:30. The hallway was dark, as usual, with only one flickering bulb near the stairwell. And there he was, the man from 4B, sitting in his usual spot, but this time, he spoke. "Jamie," he said without even looking at me. "Your sister working tonight?" I stopped in my tracks. My heart started pounding. How did he know my name? And more importantly, how did he know Sarah's schedule? I wanted to lie, but for some reason, maybe because I was nervous or caught off guard, I just nodded and kept walking. He didn't say anything else. Just watched me as I fumbled with my keys and rushed into our apartment. The second the door shut, I locked all 3 bolts and leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. The air in our place felt heavier that night. Like something was off. I tried to shake it off. I did my usual routine, washed up, changed into pajamas, grabbed some chips, and watched a few episodes of an old cartoon on my laptop. It was close to midnight when I finally decided to shower and call it a night. That's when things got really creepy. I was in the shower for maybe 5 minutes when I heard a noise, a low, slow dragging sound, almost like something heavy being pulled across the floor. I froze. The sound wasn't coming from outside the apartment. It was inside. I turned off the water and listened. Silence, then another sound, a soft creak, like a door opening. I wrapped myself in a towel and stood there, heart racing, barely breathing. I opened the bathroom door a crack and peeked out into the hallway. Nothing, no movement. No light except the one flickering above the stove in the kitchen. I convinced myself it was just the old building. Pipes, creaky floors, whatever. I walked carefully to my bedroom and shut the door. As I was getting dressed, I noticed something weird on the wall next to my bed. It was a tiny hole, smaller than a pencil, like someone had poked a needle through the wall. I got closer, squinting. That's when I saw it. An eye. Someone was on the other side of that wall looking right at me. I stumbled backward and fell, hitting my desk hard enough to knock over my lamp. The bulb shattered, plunging the room into dim shadows. I crawled to the door and slammed it shut, locking it even though I knew that wouldn't stop much if someone was really in the walls. I was shaking all over. I grabbed my phone and called Sarah. She picked up immediately. "Jamie, what's wrong?" I could barely talk, my voice cracked. "Someone's looking at me through the wall." "What? What do you mean?" "There's a hole in my room." I looked in it, and there was an eye. I saw an eye. "I think it's him, the guy next door." Sarah cursed under her breath and told me to call the police. She said she was leaving work right that second. As I dialed 911, I heard something else, knocking at the front door, loud, slow knocks, and then his voice, "Open up, Jamie, I didn't drill those holes." I didn't do anything. "Just open the door." I froze. He knew I had seen. He knew I was alone. The 911 operator stayed on the line with me while I backed away from the door, clutching a kitchen knife I grabbed from the counter. My hands were trembling so bad I could barely hold on to it. The operator told me officers were on the way. I swear it felt like forever, but it was maybe 5 minutes later when I saw the red and blue lights flash through the window. The knocking stopped. The hallway went silent. The police didn't waste time. They got there fast and knocked on our door first. I opened it just a crack and explained everything, pointing to the wall in my bedroom. They went next door to 4B. The man didn't answer. They forced the door open. What they found still haunts me. His apartment was dark. No lights on. Just candles to burn down to little wax puddles. The walls were covered in newspaper clippings, pictures of random people and scribbled notes. And near the wall we shared with him, a small wooden chair, a drill, and several holes drilled through the wall, some leading right into my bedroom and bathroom. They said he had at least 5 different peepholes hidden behind, small stickers or pieces of tape. One of the officers came out and said quietly to me, "You're lucky you caught this when you did." Sarah came home shortly after and was completely shaken. She pressed charges: invasion of privacy, stalking, and destruction of property. The building management evicted him a few days later and patched up the walls on his dime. We moved out 2 months later. We didn't wait for the lease to end. I still have dreams about it sometimes. About that eye in the wall, and the worst part? They never found the man from 4B. He vanished. By the time they tried to arrest him, he was gone. They searched for days, even checked nearby buildings. Nothing, like he was never really there, just a shadow that watched. Let me tell you about the weirdest, scariest night of my life. Something that still gives me chills every time I think about it. This happened back in the summer of 2016, just after I graduated high school. I wasn't doing much that summer, just killing time with odd jobs and hanging out with friends before college started. One of my closest friends back then was Darren. He was a couple years older than me, super outdoorsy and way too comfortable with the whole living in the wild thing. I mean, the guy could probably build a shelter out of leaves and survive a month in the woods with a Swiss Army knife. I, on the other hand, was a total rookie. I liked nature just fine. From a distance, preferably with Wi-Fi. But Darren kept pushing me to join him on one of his weekend camping trips, saying it'd be good for me. After months of saying no, I finally gave in when his younger cousin Kayla said she was coming too. Kayla was a couple years younger than me, smart, funny, and honestly, I kinda had a thing for her back then. So yeah, I figured this would be a chance to hang out. Maybe impress her with my non-existent camping skills. Big mistake. We drove out together early on a Friday afternoon. Darren in his beat-up red pickup, Kayla riding a shotgun, and me stuffed in the back with our gear. Darren didn't take us to a normal campground. Oh, that would have been too easy. Instead, he had this secret spot deep in the woods outside a small town called Elmridge. Ever heard of it?
Me neither.
It was basically one road, a gas station, and a diner that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the 80s. We took some back roads, then a gravel path, and finally turned onto this barely there trail covered in weeds and pine needles. The trees got thicker and the light dimmer as we went further in. After what felt like forever, probably only 15 minutes, but it was long enough to make me uneasy, Darren stopped the truck. "This is it," he said, like we were pulling into Disneyland. To me, it looked like trees. Just trees and dirt and the feeling that your phone wasn't going to work out here. I was right about that last part, by the way. Zero signal. Not even a single bar. We unloaded the gear. 2 tents, sleeping bags, food, water, a little camping stove, and some other basics. Darren insisted we didn't need much. "Nature provides," he said with a grin. I didn't find it very comforting. We set up camp in a clearing surrounded by tall pines. The ground was soft with dead leaves, and the only sounds were birds, wind, and the occasional snapping twig in the distance. Darren had us each do something. I helped set up the tents, poorly. Kayla laid out supplies, and Darren disappeared to collect firewood like some woodland wizard. By sundown, we had a nice little fire going. The kind that makes you forget you're miles from anything remotely safe or normal. We roasted hot dogs, made s'mores, and told dumb stories. It was actually fun for a while. Kayla laughed at everything, and Darren kept teasing me about being a city boy. I was starting to relax, but then things got weird. It started with a sound. We were just sitting around the fire, winding down for the night. Kayla had gone into her tent to get her hoodie, and Darren and I were talking about something random. I can't even remember what. But suddenly Darren stopped mid-sentence, held up his hand, and said, "You hear that?" At first I didn't, but then I did. A soft crunching sound, like footsteps on dry leaves, slow, deliberate, coming from somewhere in the woods just beyond where the firelight reached. "Probably a deer," I said, trying to sound chill. Darren didn't say anything. He just stared into the trees. His body went stiff. That's when I got nervous because Darren wasn't the type to get spooked easily. I tried again. "You sure it's not a deer?" He shook his head. "Deer don't walk like that. Too heavy." I looked at him. "Bear?" He hesitated. "Maybe. But even a bear wouldn't come this close to a fire." Then we heard it again. Closer this time, and not just the steps. There was this sound and a clicking, almost like someone snapping their tongue against the roof of their mouth. But deeper. Wet. Wrong. Kayla came back from her tent just as Darren whispered, "Into the tents now." He didn't yell. He didn't panic, which somehow made it scarier. We scrambled. I dove into the tent I was supposed to share with Darren, and Kayla went into hers. I zipped the flap shut and sat there in the dark, heart pounding so loud I thought whatever was out there would hear it. The clicking got louder. Then came the breathing, heavy, raspy, right outside the tent. I could see the fire flickering through the thin fabric, casting shadows. And then I saw it, a shape tall, too tall to be a person, broad shoulders, long arms. And it was walking upright, not like a bear on its hind legs, but smooth like it was used to standing that way. I covered my mouth to keep from screaming. It walked past my tent and toward Kayla's. Then everything happened at once. Kayla screamed. Not a startled scream, a full-body panic scream. I heard her tent shake like something was pushing on it, trying to rip it open. Darren started shouting from somewhere outside, "Run! Run, I didn't even think." I burst out of my tent and ran toward the sound of his voice. Kayla was already out, barefoot, eyes wide with terror. Darren grabbed her hand and we bolted. We had no flashlights. The fire was dying. Everything was shadows and branches and roots trying to trip us. I could hear it behind us. The clicking, the breathing, and now heavy footsteps thudding against the forest floor. It was chasing us. I don't know how we made it back to the truck. I was last in line and I swear I felt something brush the back of my neck. But we made it. We jumped in. Darren in the driver's seat, Kayla beside him, and me in the back. He floored it, but there was a problem. We hit a dead end. The narrow path we had come in on didn't give him space to turn easily, and there were trees everywhere. Darren slammed on the brakes and threw it into reverse, trying to turn the truck without hitting anything. "Turn off the lights," I shouted. "It'll see us." "I can't," he snapped. "I'll crash if I can't see." The headlights swept through the woods with every motion of the truck. Trees, dirt, trees, and then for half a second a figure. It was just standing there, at the edge of the light, watching us. I'll never forget what it looked like. Its skin was pale and stretched tight, almost shiny. Its arms were too long, its head tilted like it was curious. And those eyes, not glowing or monstrous, just dark, deep, empty. Then we lost sight of it as Darren spun the wheel and finally got the truck pointed the right way. He slammed on the gas and we tore out of there, bouncing over roots and rocks, the truck rattling like it was going to fall apart. We didn't stop until we hit pavement again. Nobody said a word for a long time. We left everything back there, the tents, the food, our clothes. Darren didn't even slow down. We went straight back to town and stayed the night in his tiny apartment, all three of us on edge, checking the windows every few minutes like that thing might have followed us. The next morning we talked about what happened. Kayla said she woke up to the sound of breathing right against her tent wall. Then something pushed hard against it like it was trying to crawl inside. That's when she screamed. Darren swears he's never seen anything like it, and he's been camping all over the state. We still don't know what it was. Animal? Some forest spirit? Something not supposed to exist? People ask us, how do you know it wasn't just a person? Because it wasn't. It was too tall, too fast, and the sounds it made, they weren't human, not even close. I think everyone has one experience in life that changes them, something they can't explain no matter how hard they try. For us, that night in the woods outside Elmridge was it, and whatever that thing was, it